Have you ever felt that no matter how much you practice, your Mandarin pronunciation just doesn't sound quite right? Well, today we're going to fix that. Think of this as a complete training session. We're going to go from the mechanics of how you make sounds all the way to the mindset of a confident speaker. So let's get started.
Here's our game plan. First, we're going to completely rethink how we approach Chinese tones. Then, we'll build the Daily Practice Toolkit, something you can actually use. After that, we'll dive into the psychology of it all with the speaker's mindset. And finally, we'll wrap up with some quick wins you can use to sound clear, like right away.
You know, if I ask most learners this question, the answer is almost always the same: the tones. They can feel so frustrating, so abstract, and just like the biggest wall between you and being understood. If that sounds familiar, trust me, you are not alone. But today, we're going to change how you see them.
Okay, let's dive into our first section, rethinking Chinese tones. The big idea here is to stop thinking of tones as individual, separate things and start hearing them as part of a melody. It's about the music, not just the notes.
So, here's a huge shift in perspective. Native speakers don't really process tones one by one by one. They hear them in chunks, as these little melodic sequences, and usually that means in pairs. So if you want to sound more natural, you've got to practice them the same way. Not as lonely, isolated sounds, but as connected pairs that flow right into each other.
Now, of course, some of these combinations are way trickier than others. These 5 pairs you see here, they're usually the toughest for learners. So focusing your practice right here, that's a huge shortcut. Let's just go through them. We've got the first tone dropping to a 4th tone, like in fei ji. The opposite, 4th up to 1st, like in ri qi. The tricky 3rd tone dip into a rising 2nd tone, in yu yan. 2nd tone into that 3rd tone dip, like shui shi. And of course, the classic 3rd tone into a 4th tone, as in hanyu. Pinpoint which one of these feels the weirdest for you to say. That's where you start.
And once you've found your tricky pair, we can use this amazing technique called tone pair anchors. The idea is so simple but so effective. For each of those tough combinations, you pick one word you know really well, like hanyu for that 3rd, 4th pair, and you practice that one single word until it feels completely automatic. That word becomes your anchor, your reference point for any other word that has that same exact melody.
Okay, on to section 2, your Daily Practice Toolkit. So, if rethinking tones was our mental strategy, this is the physical training. This is how we build the muscle memory you need so that clear speech becomes automatic.
Here is a super simple, repeatable workout. First, warm up your mouth. I mean, you wouldn't run a race without stretching, right? Same idea. Second, just immerse yourself in listening, every single day. And third, practice this incredibly powerful technique called shadowing.
So what's the big deal about shadowing? How is it different from just listening? Well, think of it this way. Passive listening, when you have a podcast on in the background, that builds your intuition for the language's rhythm. But active shadowing, where you're trying to speak along with the recording in real time, that requires intense focus. And that's what builds the actual muscle memory from making the sounds yourself. You need both.
Now, here is a really important tip for your shadowing practice, and it might not be what you expect. It is so much more effective to take one short piece of audio, maybe just 30 seconds long, and repeat it 20 times than it is to practice 20 different clips just once. Let me say that again. Go for depth, not breadth. Your goal is to absolutely master that one little piece until you can mimic it perfectly.
And to add to that core workout, here are a few more tools for your kit. Chinese tongue twisters are fantastic for really fine-tuning your muscle control. And whenever you can, watch videos, don't just listen. That way you can actually see the mouth shapes of native speakers. And of course, nothing beats getting feedback from a supportive tutor, someone you actually feel comfortable making mistakes with. Okay, this brings us to section 3, and this is a big one, the speaker's mindset. We've talked about what to do, the physical practice. Now we need to talk about how to think. This is all about the psychology behind making real progress and actually feeling confident when you speak. Let's be crystal clear about our goal here. The goal is not perfection. Chasing some flawless native-level accent, honestly, it's just a recipe for stress and a fear of opening your mouth. Your real goal, the one you can actually achieve, is clear communication. That's it. That's empowering. And it's the whole reason we're learning this language in the first place, right?
Here's a really powerful tool for your mindset.
It's called finding a language parent. Basically, you find one specific native speaker whose voice, whose accent, whose style you just really admire. Find someone who has a lot of content out there, and you make them your model. By focusing on shadowing just this one person, you start to absorb their unique sound and cadence in a much deeper way.
And to give you a really concrete example, a lot of learners really like a speaker known as Bear Talk. He just has this very clear, pleasant, and kind of slow way of speaking, which makes his stuff absolutely perfect for focused shadowing practice. He'd be a great person to check out if you're looking for a language parent to start with.
Part of the right mindset is also just embracing reality. And that means two things. First, you have to know that the perfect, standard Mandarin in your textbook, it's not what you're going to hear on the street. Expect accents, expect people to talk fast, expect variations. Second, be realistic about yourself. Your pronunciation is going to be worse when you're tired. That's just a fact. The key is not to beat yourself up about it and hold yourself to this impossible standard all the time.
And that brings us to our final section, quick wins for clarity. Think of these as simple, high-impact tweaks you can make to your speech right now and get an immediate improvement in how you sound. Your first quick win is just a number, 20%. Try to slow down your overall speaking speed by about 20%. It's not so slow that you'll sound weird, but it's just enough to give your mouth and your brain the time they need to form every sound correctly. Seriously, this one is a game changer.
Next up, just relax. So many learners, because they're trying so hard to be clear, end up creating all this tension in their jaw and tongue. They're over-exaggerating everything. But if you watch native speakers, their mouths and faces are generally pretty relaxed. If you feel yourself straining, you're probably trying too hard. Try to imitate that sense of ease.
So what do you do when you hit one of those words that just feels like tongue acrobatics? Use this simple 3-step drill. First, just isolate the word. Then, say it super slowly, breaking it down piece by piece. Finally, just repeat it over and over, getting a little bit faster each time until that muscle movement feels smooth and totally natural.
All right, this one is a powerful tool that not enough people use. Record yourself on video, not just audio. Why? Because it lets you see your own mouth. You can then literally watch your recording side by side with a video of a native speaker saying the same thing and compare the physical movements. It is an incredibly direct way to see what's going wrong. And finally, here's a surprising one you might not have thought about. Improving your pronunciation isn't just about speaking. It's also deeply connected to your listening and your vocabulary. The more words you know, the faster your brain can identify the sounds you're hearing. It's like having a bigger library in your head. It's just way easier to find a match for the sounds coming in, especially when people are talking fast.
Okay, we have covered a complete training plan today, from your mindset all the way down to your muscles. But just knowing this stuff isn't enough. So the question isn't what to do, it's where you're going to start. I want you to look back at everything we talked about and just ask yourself, what is the one technique you're going to commit to practicing tomorrow? Because that is where your transformation really begins.